Hey, yo, Pro Wrestling Podcast listeners, help us out and click subscribe to show your support. And while you're at it, if you're sick and tired of spending $60 to $100 every year for the latest and greatest wrestling video games, stop immediately and go to Wrestler Unstoppable, available exclusively through Facebook, where you can create your wrestler, sign contracts, get involved in storylines, headline pay-per-views, even build your own corporation, all included in Wrestler Unstoppable, available now to all Facebook users for free. If you want to become a member of the Pro Wrestling Podcast family, you want your name in the shoutouts like our buddies Mike in Lansdale and Harold in St. Louis, then go to our Patreon page at patreon.com/Fro Wrestling Podcast, F-R-O Wrestling Podcast, and sign up today. Don't forget, we have loyalty rewards. Anybody who contributes $15 a month, you get to co-host an episode of one of our live episodes, and our $7.50 a month contributors can get entered into a drawing for one winner to also co-host an episode of our live show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this live episode of the Pro Wrestling Podcast. We'll be taking your questions or comments as we go through the show, and we'll be touching on the day's news and rumors, things going on in the wrestling world. If you have questions for us to address on a future episode, by all means, call into the Pro Wrestling Sound Off line 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at 267-642-1160, where you can put in your questions, your comments, your concerns, anything you want us to address. Make sure you put your name in your question. It is a talk-to-text service. So you talk, it'll text your questions and comments to us. As I said, make sure you give yourself a shout out there so we can give you credit when we talk about your questions on the air. If you are new to the Pro Wrestling Podcast, if you've never been here before, you gotta check out the homepage, F-R-O Wrestling.com, FroWrestling.com, where you can preview all the topics coming to the show, and it's a great way to come up with some of those questions, those things you want us to discuss for a future episode. If you are streaming live right now with us, feel free to use whatever chat feature is enabled in your streaming service, and we will see your comments live on the board right now, and we can give you credit while we're in the show. Right off the top, I want to get to a few things. It's been a little bit since we've done an episode. Crazy time of year, as everyone knows. But I do want to send my most heartfelt condolences to the families of both the Dynamite Kid, who passed away last week at the age of 60 on his 60th birthday. How tragic his story has been, going from being arguably the greatest pound-for-pound wrestler in history and ending up with a really challenged later life, being confined to a wheelchair, several surgeries, tons of injuries from his years in the ring, abuse of prescription pain medication and steroids, and it was just really a sad case. And it's always sad to see anyone go too early, and you just gotta wonder how much of an impact he could have had on the business had he been a little more mobile and been able to contribute more, especially to people like 205 Live, Ring of Honor, Impact Wrestling with their X Division. This is a guy who inspired so many of those styles, even in New Japan, where they have their Super Juniors, things of that nature. The Dynamite Kid always exemplified the elite of the light heavyweight wrestlers. He was an amazing talent. Yes, a lot of people know him for his time with the British Bulldogs with Davey Boy Smith, and I get that, great tag team wrestler. But I'll be honest here. Yes, they could put on amazing tag team matches. They held one WWF Tag Team Championship when they defeated the Dream Team at WrestleMania 2. Did not hold it for a full year, lost it before WrestleMania 3, and that's the extent of their mainstream championship successes. Yes, they did some things in Stampede afterwards, then they ended up splitting up in Stampede and feuding with each other and things of that nature, but the tag team itself, as great as it was, I think is a shell compared to the amazing talent and the amazing contributions the Dynamite Kid did as a singles wrestler, both in Calgary before coming to WWE and just all over the world, in Japan and things of that nature. So, sad time. Condolences out to the family of the Dynamite Kid. In addition, one of the true legends in the world of professional wrestling, Larry the Axe Hennig, passing away at the age of 82 last week. Father of Mr. Perfect Kurt Hennig and Curtis Axel. Really a tough situation. This is a guy who was so into his children, so into their careers. And if you've ever met him at a convention or things of that nature, you've never heard a person say a bad thing about Larry the Axe Hennig. Very calm, even-spoken guy. He was willing to take a few minutes to talk to any of the fans. I sometimes think he appreciated the fact that some people knew who he was when he would interact with them, unless it was obvious. If he's sitting at a table at a signing, it's one thing, but just in public, if you ever saw him in public, he came through Philly the one time, and I knew who he was from AWA videos that I had watched back in the day, and it was just, he was such a nice guy. And so, condolences out to the Hennig family as well. Going to get into some of the other news. There's Hulk Hogan news this week. Apparently, WWE on the verge of signing Hulk Hogan. This is not a performer's contract that they're talking about. It is more of an ambassador role, but I suspect that there is a good chance he'll be on television as an authority figure, potentially as a new general manager for one of the two brands. You would think perhaps it would be Raw with all the things going on with Constable Corbin and whatnot, but I think it's very strange that it took so long to bring him back into the fold at all. Then you bring him back for the controversial Crown Jewel event, and then he disappears. He's not on television at all. He's been going around the country doing meet and greets and ambassador work for WWE already without being signed. And now it looks like they're about to ink the paperwork and bring him back as an actual talent or ambassador of the company. And I've said this before. People who follow the podcast know that I've had a lot of conversation about Hulk Hogan's past transgressions. I understand the sensitive nature of the things he said. I will never, I don't think, truly fully forgive that. But as a person of forgiveness myself, I think it would be against my own character not to give him another chance. But it's one of those like with a short leash kind of deals. Hulk Hogan needs to be doing the right things to the right people to try to rectify anything he can after his little issue back in 2015. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But bringing him back into the fold, you have to admit, there is no way to talk about the history of professional wrestling and not talk about Hulk Hogan. He is the attraction in the business. Don't get me wrong. There are people like Stone Cold and Ric Flair and Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart and all these people who are amazing. But at the time when Hulk Hogan emerged, 1984, January 23rd, winning the championship from the Iron Sheik and going on that incredible run that he had really up until about 1992 into 93. Remember, he left for a little bit in 92, came back 93, won the title from Yokozuna in 93, then disappeared 3 months later. That initial run was incredibly successful, more in the mainstream media than in the diehard wrestling community. In the diehard wrestling fans, I think were always NWA fans. Not that they didn't like the WWF. I think a lot of them preferred, the Bruno Sammartino, Bob Backlund era of WWF programming. But I think a lot of the people back then really recognized Ric Flair and the NWA World Heavyweight Championship as the real, not to use the pun from his appearance in WWE back in 92, but the real world champion. I think a lot of people felt that way. And Hulk Hogan was the North guy, the guy coming down from Connecticut and New York, and it took a lot for him to break through in the mainstream media, and he became the face of the business. No matter what any superstar ever says, Ric Flair, who is arguably the greatest talent of all time, would be the first one to tell you Hulk Hogan is the man when it comes to wrestling, because his influence in mass media is why wrestling got to where it got to. So we'll have to see how his impact plays out on television yet again, and hopefully it's something very positive. I hope they don't do something hokey, like have him purposely interject in a match, giving someone a championship because of some kind of racial thing. I think that would be horrible for television. I've already heard rumors that that's something that they may consider doing, pushing Titus O'Neil all of a sudden or something of that nature, or Apollo Crews. I get those guys deserve a push either way, but please don't do it with Hulk Hogan. Do it with somebody else. You don't need to go there. Leave it go, see how things go, see how the fan response is, see how the mass media response is, and then have somebody else do those things. Which, by the way, I think Apollo Crews is long overdue for a run with that Intercontinental Championship. And if you're not going to give him that Intercontinental title, move him over to 205 Live and give him that championship. I think he's way overlooked for how incredibly talented he is. The big news of the week, the headline for this episode, is all about The Rock and the plans WWE have or had or has for The Rock at WrestleMania. So apparently, and we had reported on this earlier in the year, that the plan was for The Rock to win the Royal Rumble and go on to face Roman Reigns in the main event of WrestleMania. And of course, because of the untimely health issues for Roman Reigns, the diagnosis of the returning leukemia, that is off the table. That is not going to happen. But that does not mean that The Rock is not in the plans for WrestleMania. It sounds like The Rock is now being discussed to be the challenger to still win the Royal Rumble and face Brock Lesnar for the WWE Universal Championship on the grandest stage of them all. The only issue I have here is, and much like Seth Rollins said this past Monday on Raw, this is a guy who hasn't wrestled on Raw, meaning Brock Lesnar, since 2002. I want you to think about that for a moment. It's 2018. Like, there's people who we're not even born yet who can drive now. You know, in the time span between when Brock has had an actual match on Monday Night Raw. That's a problem. Yes, he's shown up and gotten physical, but no actual match. That's an issue. He's done more of these house show one-off deals for the network and things of that nature than he has for Raw. And you're supposed to be the flagship of the Raw brand. The Intercontinental Championship really is the championship on Raw and has been for the better part of 2 years now because of Brock's absence. Now, I know a lot of people, and myself included, would much prefer to see Seth Rollins take the championship from Brock Lesnar. I think that's a storyline that really has never been told. Yes, I know they got to mix it up a little bit when Seth interjected himself at Mania a couple years ago, but that's not the same thing. Seth Rollins very well could be the future of this company for a very long time, assuming he stays healthy. And so you have he and you have AJ Styles. That's really your two marquee baby faces in the company who can really work with just about anybody. I mean, if you can't tell, watch the AJ Styles Brock Lesnar match from not this past, but the last year's Survivor Series. Then watch matches he has with someone like, tonight going into the ring and wrestling tonight on SmackDown and putting on a clinic. It's almost like watching Bret Hart when he used to wrestle like the 1-2-3 Kid but could still wrestle Yokozuna. Like, AJ Styles can wrestle with anybody, and so can Seth Rollins. He's proven it in the past. He's going to continue to prove it over and over and over again, and that's the guy you build the brand around. You can't keep bringing in these part-timers. So my issue with The Rock challenging at Mania is he's another part-timer. Are you going to suddenly have The Rock, who's in multi-million dollar filmed contracts and who is, I don't know if it's tongue-in-cheek or even legitimately thinking about a presidential run in 2020, and you're going to have him come out and win the Universal Championship? Or do you have him lose to Brock Lesnar in the Universal title match at Mania, which nobody wants to see happen? So I don't know how you play this off. I'm always in favor of having The Rock at WrestleMania. I'm always in favor of him having a match at WrestleMania. I just don't know if I want to see that match. That match has been done all those years ago. He lost the championship to Brock. What is this? Is this the one where he gets one back and then they have a rubber match somewhere down the line? I don't like that. I would much rather, and the word out there is that he may be doing something where he's coming, Brock Lesnar starts trash talking Roman Reigns, and he, The Rock is his relative, so he's defending the honor of the family. That is so lame and ridiculous, and it really doesn't lead to a Universal Championship win for anybody who matters. Roman Reigns, for what anybody has to say about him, good, bad, or indifferent, at least if he had the Universal title, he would have defended it all over the place, everywhere in house shows and on Raw every week if he could. But now we need somebody to do that. Universal title, it's not a Raw Championship if it's never defended on Raw. I don't know if some people understand that. I've seen on social media people defending that the championship is a special attraction and that's why it doesn't have to appear on the show. I get it. But doesn't it have to be a part of the show to be the flagship of the show? I'm not saying it has to be defended all the time, but you need more than a sporadic appearance once a month or once every month and a half or 2 months. We haven't seen Brock in weeks. So it's time. It's time to put it on somebody else, somebody more consistent, and that should really be Seth Rollins. But if it has to be The Rock better be coming back for more of a substantial role. If you're going to bring in a part-timer, bring back Batista for that match, because Batista at least is interested in a much more full-time run and one last real good run with WWE. He thought his last run was not successful. Now, I know he wants to come back and play the heel, unless it's against Triple H, but the Triple H plans are off because of his injury. So we'll have to see what happens. But at least as of right now, the word is it may be The Rock versus Brock at WrestleMania 35 as the main event, if it's not headlined by the women, which, by the way, it should be. New Japan held their World Tag League final match, Evil and Sonata defeating the Guerrillas of Destiny. That is a huge thing, only because I think Evil and Sonata get overlooked as one of the greatest tag teams in the world right now, as are the Guerrillas of Destiny. People talk about WWE programming, the Bar, the New Day, the Usos. I get it. They're the three most exposed tag teams in the world. Akam and Razor, the Raw, well, no longer, they were the Raw Tag Team Champions. Authors of Pain are a solid tag team, but that's really all that Raw has. The Revival's great, except they've been buried. You broke up Slater and Rhino, which who cares? No one cares about any other teams on Raw. But the Young Bucks typically get a lot of respect. The Kingdom gets some respect. People like that. SoCal Uncensored gets some respect. But when you look around the world, Evil and Sonata have gone and thrown down with just about everybody. It's pretty much them and the Lucha Bros that really, if you don't go WWE, really and the Young Bucks deserve some consideration as the best tag team in the world. You know, Young Bucks have somewhat of a claim. You've got incredible matches from the Guerrillas of Destiny in New Japan. I know they're a little gruff. I know they use a lot of profanity, and some people don't like that because they have kids watching the show. I get it. Watch on Access Television the actual wrestling. They can go. Haku's kids are super uber talented. And then when you look at, Evil and Sonata, it's such a unique presentation. Sonata is like incredible technical, masterful, high flying, everything guy. And Evil is just this brute force. It's almost like a Hart Foundation tag team in a way, where Sonata playing the Bret Hitman Hart role and Evil playing the Jim the Anvil Neidhart role, R.I.P. Mr. Neidhart. But, that's kind of the feel I get from Evil and Sonata. They win the World Tag League, and what a great set to win and carry that banner on. What a great tag team tournament. If you don't pay attention to New Japan Pro Wrestling, the World Tag League is equivalent or akin to the G1 Climax in the summer for the singles, just like the Best of the Super Juniors for the junior heavyweights. Gotta check out their programming. They really put on some really unique concepts that a lot of fans here in the United States aren't aware of. I thought it was funny. I saw in the news, speaking of New Japan talents, Chris Jericho, the current IWGP Intercontinental Champion, was actually on his way back to the tour bus from one of his concert dates, and there was a drunken fan who I guess had been backstage or something of that nature, trying to get on the bus, trying to sneak on the bus. He ended up getting decked by Jericho and security and another band member. Absolutely, got his tail whooped, and I find that funny. Jericho, the guy who got in a fight with Brock Lesnar backstage, he really doesn't have any fear. That guy is a man's man. And I thought it was really crazy to hear that he had this fan incident. And obviously, it's almost like when you watch pro wrestling, you see people jump the rail every now and again. That's a serious thing. You're putting the wrestlers in harm's way. They have to deal with that. Well, I think Jericho's wrestling mentality kind of kicked in there, and he just took the guy out. Good for him. That's what the guy gets for being a drunken fool. There is a new challenger for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. The big show coming up on January 5th, and the NWA champion Nick Aldis will be defending against former Impact Wrestling TNA star James Storm, who has been in ICW over in Europe, wrestling for other promotions over in Europe, really doing a great job of staying in great ring shape. You ought to see, he has totally redone his body. That guy's been putting in so much work in the gym, and he looks like a whole different wrestler in the ring, and I think he makes a great opponent for Nick Aldis. Now, I don't expect Aldis to lose, and I really hope James Storm makes the decision to come to WWE sooner than later. I really think that what they ought to do, and maybe Hunter has thought of this, I don't know, because I know he pays much more attention to the competition than Vince does, but how cool would it be, since the word is Jason Jordan is hopefully nearing a return to the ring. He was in Birmingham, Alabama this week to find out about his neck and his issues and the sensitivity in his hands and whatnot, grip strength. And if he is cleared to return to the ring, you now have the Raw Tag Team Championship on Bobby Roode and Chad Gable. You would easily see where Jason Jordan could come into that picture and complicate things. Bobby Roode would be left without a partner, and then you could have James Storm come in, and you've got Beer Money against American Alpha. And I think that is a great way to do three things. One, reintroduce Jason Jordan in a meaningful way. Two, bring in a new superstar to instantly have a program it's built in and customized that you've been building for months that you can easily transition to. And more importantly, three, those two tag teams would make Raw's tag team division much more legitimate. American Alpha is an incredible tag team. Beer Money is one of the best tag teams in the history of Impact Wrestling, and that's not a knock on tag team wrestling. Impact has put together some amazing tag teams over the years, and they never get mainstream appreciation, I think, from the wrestling community. I remember America's Most Wanted, AMW was fantastic, another James Storm tag team that never got its just place in wrestling history and lore. Some other teams there, the Naturals and such. So it'd be nice to see Beer Money make a presence felt in WWE. I love the Glorious character, but get rid of that and move on back to Beer Money or something like Beer Money, because obviously Beer Money's probably owned by Impact Wrestling. But it would be nice to see James Storm, I love that he's going to get a shot at the NWA Championship, but I'd like to see him in a WWE ring, and I'd like to see Jason Jordan return to the ring as well. Huge WWE signing, a new Performance Center recruit, going to start in January, and that is former Lucha Underground star Shane Strickland. He wrestled for Lucha Underground as Killshot. He wrestles for so many promotions, MLW, Evolve, all those different companies, Rev Pro. He is just an incredible talent. He would be a huge addition to the 205 Live roster, and the kind of matches that he's capable of putting on. My only concern with Shane Strickland signing with WWE is they seem to really, I'm trying to think of a good word, neuter their new talents that come in from the indies. These indie darlings, so to speak, get over with the fans because they put on some of the most incredible high impact, high aerial assaults, big high spots. And then you come to WWE, and with the exception maybe of Ricochet, they pretty much squash all of that when you get here. They don't give talents the opportunity to really showcase what they can do. I'll give you a great example. Brock Lesnar. A lot of people hate Brock Lesnar's moveset. They think he's too methodical. He's too predictable. I'll let you in on a secret. If you go to YouTube right now and look up the Minnesota Stretching Crew, that would be Brock Lesnar in his early days in OVW with Shelton Benjamin as a tag team where they won the OVW Tag Team Championship. And you can find where they did a dark match on SmackDown where Brock Lesnar hits that shooting star press, the one he botched at WrestleMania against Kurt Angle, and he hits it with ease. He used to use that as his finishing hold. And it's something he can pull off if he chose to, but WWE is so set on him being this unconquerable beast that why would you have an unconquerable beast go fly through the air? It just doesn't make sense. But he's very athletic. And same thing can be said for people like Killshot. He'll get there, and they won't let him do some of the stuff he can do. I get it. The cruiserweights do some exciting stuff. AJ Styles does the flying forearm and things of that nature, the 450 splashes and whatnot. But these guys, Shane Strickland can do so much more. And that's the only concern I have is him being restricted in a way if he comes to WWE. There's been some changes to the United Kingdom talent contracts. This has been going on for a couple weeks now. Now they are getting paid a little bit more money, but they are not going to be permitted to perform for any company that has a television distribution deal. That's a lot different from what it was in the past. Now they're still able to perform for companies WWE has a working relationship with, like Evolve, ICW, WXW. So they have some options, okay, Progress Wrestling, but they can't just willy-nilly wrestle for anybody. You're not going to see Tyler Bate show up at the PWG Battle for Los Angeles. You're not going to see Pete Dunne show up in Chikara anymore, which is kind of a shame because Mustache Mountain, the trios, were great for that tournament. If anybody's ever seen the Chikara Trios tournament, it is something to be had. Check that out on YouTube as well. They have a Chikara channel. It was such a unique presentation. But special shout out this episode to Excellence Professional Wrestling, who put on a show with a lot of talent from Chikara this past weekend. Got to see Icarus in the ring. He looks like Chris Jericho, but shorter, if that's even possible. But incredibly talented guy. They have just such a unique presentation. So many guys in like lucha masks, dressed up like ants and bumblebees and mosquitoes and every other bug you can think of, but very unique presentation. So my little shout out to Excellence Pro Wrestling and Chikara. Check them out if you get the opportunity. Seth Rollins' original Intercontinental Championship plans were nixed. It turns out that it was supposed to be him dropping the belt to, I had to say it like that too, dropping the belt, because it's still a belt. I don't care if it's a championship, it's still a belt. Dropping the belt to Elias, but then with the issue with Roman Reigns going out with his leukemia diagnosis, they needed some more baby faces. So that's where the flip for Elias to become a baby face and the halt on him getting the Intercontinental title takes place. The only issue I have with that is, and I can see down the line, if you have Seth Rollins lose the Intercontinental Championship to Dean Ambrose at TLC, then I could see where there may be an opportunity for Elias to jump into that Intercontinental picture against Dean Ambrose. I hope they don't rush that. That would be a great WrestleMania opportunity. I would much rather see the Intercontinental Championship defended in a ladder match at Mania all over again like it used to be, but we'll have to see. But at least we know that WWE had serious considerations about putting that championship on Elias. Considering that championship really is the championship on Raw, that's a huge statement about how their confidence level is with Elias. So somebody that they don't necessarily have the most confidence in is Alexa Bliss, not in her in-ring ability or anything of that nature, but we can't seem to get a firm grasp on whether she's cleared to wrestle or not. Mark Henry was in the news last week saying that she was cleared to wrestle. Then Brian Alvarez put out a report saying that she was not cleared to wrestle. This week I saw another one where Dave Meltzer was saying she is cleared to wrestle, but they want to hold her off for a little while. I think she's doing a great job as the head of the women's division on Raw, but I think she also needs to be in the ring. But right now, with Ronda Rousey as the champion, what storyline is there for Alexa Bliss on Raw? She would actually be better served being on SmackDown, where tag team women's wrestling is less accentuated and more singles are, and move the Iconics to Raw, where there's a few more tag teams. Have the Iconics going against the Riot Squad, or have the Iconics going against Bayley and Sasha Banks, or something of that form. But definitely interesting to see that Alexa Bliss, there's so much conjecture about whether or not she's cleared to compete. Obviously, we'll have to keep our eyes on that in the near future, because WWE apparently is planning a new women's pay-per-view, The Queen of the Ring. Long overdue. The return of the King of the Ring and an introduction of the Queen of the Ring tournaments, both being discussed for this coming year. I think the Queen of the Ring would be a great idea. Obviously, Charlotte should win the first one of those since she's the queen. But we'd have to wait and see how they play that out. But I hope it's not the latter form of the King of the Ring tournament where they do all the matches on Raw and SmackDown and they just have the finals at the pay-per-view. I want to see a legit King of the Ring where you have the 8 or 16 women in one night compete in 3 or 4 matches, so they really get the spotlight and get some unique matches, some unique pairings that we haven't seen before. That's the King of the Ring. If they're wrestling this week on Raw and that one on SmackDown, and then the second round's on Raw and on SmackDown, that's not a tournament. They wrestle every night of the week anyways. There's nothing more challenging about that. The whole point of a tournament is to go through that physical endurance of going through multiple matches in one night, fighting, clawing, digging, and scratching your way to the top. That's what I want to see if they do that. So hopefully we'll get to see that soon, as soon as this coming year. New potential main roster call-up. They're talking about bringing up Aleister Black from NXT to the main roster. His character is over. He is a huge popular draw on NXT. If you remove him from NXT, you need to have something to take that place, which they're hoping EC3 would be. Then again, there's been talk of bringing EC3 to the main roster. If you keep bringing these guys up, I get it. You're bolstering the main roster, but you only have so much TV time, and you're doing a horrible job of showcasing all your talent as it is. At least with NXT, you've got a third brand where you can really showcase the heck out of some of these guys. They really are going to need a fourth brand soon, and if you count NXT UK as a fourth brand, they're going to need a fifth, because they just have acquired so much talent, and they keep bringing in new recruits to the Performance Center. There's some announced today they're going to be going to the Performance Center. There's like 4 new recruits for the January class to go along with Shane Strickland and Trevor Lee and Walter, and et cetera, et cetera. So we'll have to see how those all pan out. But it sounds like, Aleister Black, who has done such a great job in NXT, such a unique presentation, it sounds like he may be the next call-up. Can you imagine a match between he and Bray Wyatt or something of that nature? We'll have to see how that pans out. Fox wants Ronda Rousey on Fox in 2019. When they make the move to Fox Network, they want Rousey there because she has such a tie to the UFC fans, the people who are familiar with her on Fox. And I get it, I understand it, but if in order to do that, SmackDown has to become the number one brand for the company, and I don't think that's the current idea. Raw is still supposed to be the flagship brand. It's the longest running brand. It's the longest running episodic television program in history, and it's really something you'd have a tough time changing that. So I question the opportunity or the planning of how they would make this happen without sending the impression that SmackDown is either the new top show or that Rousey has somehow lost her luster and being demoted to the B brand. That's really the way it feels. Now, neither one of these brands should be felt that way right now. As much talent as they have, they both should be premier talented brands, but that's not the way WWE seems to have looked at it all these years. Maybe they changed their thinking. Maybe they drop Raw to 2 hours like they should have done a long time ago and have them both be 2 hours, and then it's more even. I don't know, but hopefully they figure something out to make Rousey impactful on Fox if they do that. Speaking of Rousey, Natalya's long-term plans. Apparently they were going to flip her heel earlier, but unfortunately with the untimely passing of her father, they didn't want to do that because they didn't want to play off that card. Now they're talking about her turning on Rousey, leading to the two of them wrestling at the Royal Rumble pay-per-view so that they have something for Ronda to do leading up to her WrestleMania opportunity where you know she's going to be facing Becky Lynch. I expect Becky Lynch to drop the SmackDown Women's Championship probably at TLC. I would drop it to Asuka and then have her go on to win the Women's Royal Rumble and face Ronda Rousey for her championship at WrestleMania as the main event of the show. I think it would be the hottest ticket in WrestleMania season. That's something they should do. But for Natalya, she's a placeholder. She's somebody who won't beat Rousey, but there's at least some storyline there, some backstory, and then they can transition into the Becky Lynch storyline really seamlessly. And it won't, there's no egg on anybody's face. You know, Natalya's a legitimate contender. She's got a great resume. She's a legit fighter. She's got incredible skills. And I actually believe she and Rousey could actually probably put on a pretty good match. Potential for a new Raw general manager. We talked earlier about the possibility of Hulk Hogan. The other one that's been being talked about on Twitter is Matt Hardy. Matt Hardy bringing his broken or woken character to Raw in a general manager role would be interesting. I'd like to see what he would do in that regard. But that's something he has been teasing religiously on Twitter. He's also been talking about how he wants to make a return to the ring. You know, some people should make a return to the ring. Some people should not. If Matt Hardy wants to come back, I support him. I think he knows his body better than anybody. But as fast as I say that, I am not in favor of Ric Flair taking any more bumps, which it was announced this week that Ric Flair has been medically cleared to take bumps. No, thank you. You're not there anymore, Rick. I love Ric Flair. I think he's one of the greatest personalities in the history of any business. But it's over. It's time to move on. 69-year-old Ric Flair taking a bump is not necessary. I don't even know why a doctor would have been examining you to determine if that's something you'd be able to do. I feel like I'm watching that Rocky Balboa movie where he was coming back to try to fight one last time against Mason the Lion Dixon. Horrible idea. It's not good. It doesn't even look right. Now you actually look like a geriatric older guy, and I don't want that to be. I don't want to be looking at somebody beating up an old guy. I hated it when they did it with Mae Young and Fabulous Moolah. I don't want to see it with Ric Flair. I have love and respect for Ric Flair. I want to remember Ric Flair, even the later years of Ric Flair, when he was tag teaming with Batista and winning the Intercontinental Championship from, Carlito. Those are great memories of Ric Flair. This right now, I don't think would be a good idea, just for his image. WWE is interested in signing one of the IWGP champions, Kushida. Kushida is about as insane a cruiserweight, light heavyweight, junior heavyweight, whatever you want to call him, as there is on this planet. And if his contract is coming due, which the rumor is it is, and WWE is interested, if he comes here, he could make a huge impact on 205 Live. And you notice how a couple times tonight I've talked about 205 Live getting new talent. WWE needs to cultivate that show. In reality, I guess that would be the fifth brand, and they would soon need a sixth brand with all the talent they're acquiring. See where I'm going with this? Like, their expansion is really ridiculous if you think about it. At some point, and the word is they have actually have the permission in the contracts they signed with ICW and Progress Wrestling and all those to acquire those European companies for a previously determined amount if they choose to at some point in time in the future. WWE, the way they're gobbling up talent, that may happen. And then you're going to see some of these smaller promotions fold. It's almost like redoing the territorial collapse all over again. WWE comes in, they buy everybody up, and they just put everybody out of business. The problem with that is, when there's no competition, there's no reason for writers to be creative and bring a unique product to the show. So I'm not in favor of that. I expect them to do it anyways, but I'm certainly not in favor of that. Neville in the news again, winning the Dragon Gate Dream Championship. I mean, let's face it. I don't know why he chose Dragon Gate to go to. I know he had a huge, extensive history there in the past, but with his drawing power, he could be bringing in some serious coins somewhere else. But I don't think it's about the money right now. He went back to Dragon Gate. He's doing great work. He became a heel right away with their faction Red. He wins one of their championships within a month of returning to the company, and the fans adore him even though he's a heel. And what a great character. And now I hope at some point he gets more exposure, gets to New Japan, gets to Ring of Honor, gets to Impact Wrestling or something like that. But in the meantime, congrats to Neville on bringing home the Dragon Gate Dream Championship. Awesome moment. Update on the James Ellsworth situation. For those who don't know, James Ellsworth accused by a 16-year-old girl of sending inappropriate content, I'll leave it like that, to her. He has disputed this. But now the rumor is that he actually paid somebody to go and steal her phone to get rid of the evidence. And then he has a lawyer statement out there that he's innocent of all these charges. Somebody else hacked an account or created the fake account or whatever. And, sent photos that he did not give permission to send and all this stuff. I don't know what the truth of it is, but I know his company, he had booked a show for December and the show is canceled because nobody wants to appear for him. This is really career threatening, over something so stupid. I don't understand. I really don't understand. One, if he didn't do it, okay, just follow me on this thought process. If he didn't send inappropriate images to a young lady, where did those images come from? And they're all available online. As gross as they are, go for it. Check them out if you really want to see that. Where did they come from? They came from somewhere. They're not photoshopped. So that means he was taking them. I mean, I guess if he wants to look at himself in a mirror, go for it. But, you protect that stuff. You don't leave that in your cell phone. Anybody who got their hands on his cell phone could have snapped those pictures, forwarded them to themselves, deleted the forwarded text, created an account, and totally poses him. It happens to people on Facebook every other day. I get a buddy ad from somebody I was already friends with, and I get a message 2 hours later saying, please don't accept that ad. My account was hacked. Well, here's James Ellsworth. You got to be smarter. You're a celebrity. People are going to try to hack you. Come on, man. But now he's in danger of losing his company and his job. Not a good thing. So, NXT talent set for TV debut. We saw the debut last week of Punishment Martinez losing, unfortunately, to Matt Riddle. I don't say unfortunately because I don't like Matt Riddle. I say that because I would like to see both of them continue to win. It's kind of hard when you bring a new talent in and have him lose his very first match. But, NXT is really great at cultivating stars. Punishment Martinez is a marquee attraction if marketed properly. I honestly, I was thinking about it the other day. There's so few people that look like him. He's kind of like a Baron Corbin, but with a real more organic, crazy side to him. And I think he's got such a future in front of him. He's still so green. He's so new in the business. This guy could be something huge going forward, and I hope WWE knows what to do with him. This is the kind of guy who could kind of pick up where the Undertaker left off if he's marketed properly. Just saying, it's one of those times where we're getting to where the Undertaker's going to ride off into the sunset sooner than later, and when that happens, that dynamic, that mystique, they always talk about the Phenom and that kind of stuff, that mystical approach, that has to go with somebody, and Punishment Martinez might be a guy who could pull something like that off. I'm not in any way comparing him to The Undertaker. Please don't get that as what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is they need somebody to fill that mystical role, and Bray Wyatt obviously isn't going to be the guy to do it. So hopefully they find a way to use Punishment Martinez in a better way. Pierre-Carl Ouellet, PCO, independent star, former member of the Quebecers back in '93, now a full-time Ring of Honor talent. I know a lot of independent companies are upset about that, but let's face it, Ring of Honor on the verge of losing many superstars, and they need to start bringing some people in. They've got Jeff Cobb now, they've got PCO, they've got a few other guys they've locked down to longer-term contracts. I know there was conversation about Silas Young was backstage at Raw, but he was not signing with WWE. He was there because he was in the area. He had some friends that work for the company, and the story I'm getting is his kid loves watching WWE, so they just went to the show as fans. They weren't there to sign a contract or negotiate with WWE, which is what everybody reported right away. No, that's not the case. He has a huge offer on the table from Ring of Honor to stay with the company, and it sounds like he's going to take it. And the biggest reason that's important is the guy is not young in his career, getting closer to that 40 age, and that's when WWE is more on a younger talent acquisition mode, not the older guys. That's why you don't see people like the Hurricane, PCO, coming into WWE. They're looking for the younger guys, the Ricochets. I'm sure they would love to get like a Will Ospreay and people like that. So we'll have to see how that pans out for PCO going to Ring of Honor, and hopefully he bolsters that product. He is great in the ring. It's fascinating to me. It's somebody of his age and experience. It's almost like he created a whole new version of himself, and it's awesome. It's a breath of fresh air. But I'm curious to see how Ring of Honor uses him. The plan right now, just to give a medical update on Braun Strowman, no announcement as to whether or not he's going to be able to actually make it to TLC, but they are planning a replacement match for that situation should he not be able to appear. I know he thinks he can go, but I know they've talked about doing Bray Wyatt instead of him. I've also heard they've talked about doing a multi-person match instead of Braun Strowman. We're going to have to see what they do. Probably won't make the call until the day of or maybe the day before, based on what the doctor's diagnosis or prognosis is for Braun Strowman. But this has ramifications for the Universal Championship match at the Royal Rumble. I think it'll still be Braun Strowman against Brock, but then they're going to have to find a way to make that happen if he doesn't show up for the match. And you still have to find a way to get Baron Corbin out of the general manager position, unless they really want to leave him there, because he's killing the ratings. All the stuff that Seth Rollins said last night on Raw, that was all true. I know it was scripted, but it was scripted. It tells you they pay attention to what you guys are saying. They listen to the fans. People always say WWE doesn't listen. If they didn't listen, they couldn't critique their own product the way we do. And they just did that. So we'll have to see how that pans out. But it sounds like they're starting to listen to the fans. And that's something they really should have been doing all along. If you get a chance, swing over to my website at frowrestling.com. Click on the Indie Events tab if you are out there looking for a smaller promotion, because you want that real personal feeling, that personal experience. There's nothing better than going to see a local independent promotion. You get to get up close with the wrestlers, interact with them at intermission. It's just such a different feel than a WWE show. If you go to a WWE show, you got to find out what hotel the guys are staying at. Try to show up there before the end of the show goes off so you can get there right when they get there, and you can get autographs, meet them in the lobby of the hotel, maybe go into the bar or whatever. That's not the same thing as one of these indie shows where you can literally walk right up to the ring, shake hands with the wrestlers, get signed autographs, take pictures, buy their merchandise right at ringside. It's very cool stuff. It's very unique. So check that out, the Indie Events tab at frowrestling.com. Make sure you check those things out. But right now, that's all the time we have for this episode. Check back with us next episode. We'll run down all the latest wrestling news and rumors. Special thanks as always go out to bensound.com and purpleplanet.com for producing all the music and sound effects that we use throughout our shows. Today's podcast was sponsored by Beazle Games. Bringing a new friend to family game night is easy with sketchy people. Showcase your artistic side in this game from Beazle Games by going to frowrestling.com and clicking the icon in the middle of the screen to pick up your copy today in time for the holidays. And AlleyRepair.com. Contact Alley Repair today for servicing of all your classic skee-ball, pinball, and arcade game needs. If you're looking for your next career move, you're considering college, university life, or you just need some formal training for your next career decision, go to our sister website at Fro Life Planning, FROLifeplanning.com for all your higher education needs, as Fro Life Educational Planning is for today, for tomorrow, and for life with Fro Life. I'm Fred Froelich, better known as Mr. Fro. I want to thank you for taking a few moments with us today. And if you're looking for more wrestling news and rumors, go to www.tsj101sports.com for their latest articles on the world of professional wrestling, or check out my articles at frowrestling.com and click on In Fro's Corner, where it's my blog where I break it down for you, all the contemporary conversations in the world of wrestling. Until next time, take care, everybody, and have a great night.